I'm Minnie." The shock on her face was something I'll never forget. The plate slipped from her hand, hitting the floor with a dull thud. It didn't break completely, just cracked and rolled under the dishwasher. My stepmother, Vera, stood there, her mouth agape like a fish, one of her diamond earrings still swinging from the force of her head turning so quickly. I need to go back to the beginning. For as long as I can remember, I believed my biological mother, Lily, died in a car accident when I was a young child. That's what my father, Henry, told me. He was a serious man, always focused on work, and Vera was the one who took care of me most of the time. She was overly sweet, always telling me how much my mother would have loved me and how she wanted me to have a happy family. Little did I know, she was using money that wasn't hers to redecorate our house and spoil herself. It all started on a rainy Thursday in October. I worked at a real estate agency in San Diego, managed by my stepbrother, Leo. He was 34, 3 years older than me, and had a perfect set of teeth that made him look like a model. I was running late for work because my old car broke down. So, I decided to take the bus. It had been ages since I last took a city bus, and I'd forgotten how cramped and smelly it could be. There was a man in the corner snoring loudly, as if he'd been on the bus all night. I sat near the front. That's when she got on. She was a small woman, probably in her early 70s. She had a tattered cloth bag and a rain hat, even though the rain had stopped. Her clothes were mismatched, a nice silk blouse paired with old, scuffed-up boots. She was holding a piece of paper and kept looking at it, then at the bus driver, then back at the paper. It was obvious she was lost. She tried to ask the driver for directions, but he just grunted and ignored her. There were no empty seats, and everyone on the bus was pretending to be busy on their phones. I stood up. It wasn't a heroic act, it was just something I did. I remembered my mother, the one I thought was dead, used to help old people on the bus. Even though I barely remembered her, that memory had stuck with me. "Ma'am, please sit here," I said. She looked at me as if I'd offered her a fortune. Her face lit up with a grateful smile, and she said, "Oh, dear, are you sure?" I helped her sit down because she seemed to have trouble with her knees. I stood up for the rest of the journey, holding on to the rail. She kept looking up at me, as if she was trying to memorize my face. After a while, she patted the seat beside her and said, "Sit with me, dear. There's room." There really wasn't much room, but I sat down, half sitting on the edge of the seat to be polite. She asked me where I was going, and I told her my office at the real estate agency on Ocean Drive. She said she was looking for a pharmacy on Elm Street and had gotten on the wrong bus. I helped her figure out where to transfer and how to ask for a transfer ticket. She kept saying, "You're so kind. You're so kind," in a shaky voice that made me a bit uncomfortable. Then she asked me my name. "Minnie," I said. "What a beautiful name," she said. "Was it your mother's choice?" I laughed and said I didn't know because my mother had died when I was little. I added that I always assumed it was my mother who picked it because my father would have named me something ordinary like Sue. She grew very still. The bus hit a pothole, and everyone bounced except her. She sat there, her hand on her bag, and said, "Your mother picked it. She loved that name. It was her grandmother's name." I stopped breathing. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked her to repeat what she'd said. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "Sweetheart, I'm going to ask you something. What's your father's name?" I told her, "Henry Thompson." She closed her eyes and put her hand over her mouth, saying, "Oh my God. Oh my God." The bus reached my stop, but I didn't get off. I asked her, "Ma'am, who are you?" She opened her bag with trembling hands and took out a wallet. She pulled out a very old and wrinkled photo. It was a picture of a baby in a pink blanket on a hospital bed. There was a woman holding the baby, and she had my exact face. "That's you and my daughter," she said. "I was the first one to hold you after she did. Your father took this picture." I was in shock. I said, "My mother is dead." She replied, "Your mother is alive, dear. She's in Fresno. She's been looking for you for 25 years. I was numb. I heard myself say, "I have to go to work. I need to think." She nodded and wrote down her number on the back of the paper and said, "I'm staying at the Motel 6, on Ocean Drive, room 105. My name is Rose. I'm your grandmother. Please call me when you can." I got off the bus a few stops past my office and walked back. I don't remember a thing about that walk. When I got to the office, Leo noticed I was late. He asked me what happened, and I almost told him the truth, but something stopped me. I said my car broke down and I had a stomachache. He looked at me suspiciously but didn't say much. I went into my office and called my father. He didn't answer. Then I called Vera. She answered in her usual chirpy voice, "Minnie, darling, are you coming for dinner on Saturday?" I asked her, "Did my mother die in a car accident?" There was a long silence on the other end. She said, "Honey, that was so long ago. I don't really remember. You should ask your father. Are you okay?" I said I was fine and that I'd seen a woman on the bus who looked like my mother's picture on my father's dresser. I made it sound like just a passing thought. That night, I drove to the motel. Rose opened the door before I even finished knocking. She'd been waiting for me. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and old carpet. There was a folder on the table. She sat me down and opened it. My mother, Lily, had a severe mental breakdown when I was 3 years old. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia, which was undiagnosed at the time. She was hospitalized for 8 weeks. During that time, my father met Vera, a divorcee who worked as a secretary at his office. By the time my mother got out of the hospital, my father had filed for full custody, claiming my mother was unfit to take care of me. My mother fought for 3 years, but she was poor and had no family in San Diego. Rose was in Fresno taking care of Lily's father, who had Alzheimer's. My father won the custody battle. He told me my mother had died and told my mother that I thought she had abandoned me. He also sent her a letter saying any contact with me would be considered harassment. My mother wrote me hundreds of letters, but they all came back stamped "Return to sender." Rose kept all those letters in a box under her bed for 25 years. When I was 15, my grandfather passed away and left a trust. It included a house in Fresno, some vineyard land in the Central Valley, and an investment account he'd built over 35 years of working at a winery. The trust named me as the primary beneficiary, but I never received the notice. When I turned 21, the trust paid out almost $500,000, along with the deed to the house and the title to the vineyard. My signature was on all the release forms, but it wasn't mine. I realized that Vera had forged my signature. She'd used the money to pay for Leo's business school and to remodel our house. For the next few months, I pretended everything was normal. I went to work, smiled at Leo, and went to family dinners at my father's house. But in the evenings, I met with a forensic accountant recommended by Rose's lawyer. On weekends, I went to a law office to go through all the documents Rose had. We found the original trust documents, the forged signatures, and tracked the money. The house in Fresno had been sold, and Vera had pocketed the money. The vineyard had been leased to a company she set up, and the income had been going into her personal account for 5 years. Finally, the day of reckoning came. It was a Monday in December. I went to work as usual. At 11 a.m. 2 police officers and a detective walked into the office. Leo stood up, and Vera, who was there to bring my father's lunch, came out of the break room with a container of sandwiches in her hand. The detective said, "Vera Thompson, we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, and grand theft." The container of sandwiches fell to the floor. Vera looked at me, and her face went through a series of emotions in a few seconds. I said very quietly, I'm pretty sure you told my grandmother I was dead. That wasn't right. She tried to deny it, but she knew she was caught. She cried in the police car, and Leo called me several times that afternoon. My father also called me, but I didn't want to talk to him. He got 1 year of probation for his role in covering up the fraud and lost his real estate license. The civil suit was settled. I got back the money with interest, the deed to the house in Fresno, and the title to the vineyard. I quit my job at the real estate agency. I changed my name to Minnie Harris, taking my mother's maiden name. I updated all my documents, and every time I wrote my new name, I felt a sense of belonging. I moved to Fresno in February. I rented out my apartment in San Diego. I drove there with my car full of boxes and my cat, Mittens, in a carrier on the passenger seat. My mother, Lily, was everything I'd ever hoped for. She was kind, funny, and had a gentle spirit. She still had bad days, but she was on medication and seeing a therapist. We had lunch together every Sunday at a local diner. She read to me in the evenings, and right now, she's reading me To Kill a Mockingbird. Rose lives next door. She's a feisty old lady. She bangs on the wall when dinner is ready. She always tells me that she got on the wrong bus that day because she felt a strange pull, as if the universe was guiding her to find me. I recently got a letter from Vera. She's in prison, serving a 5-year sentence. She wrote that she'd always loved me and that she'd only wanted what was best for our family. She said she was sick and asked if I could send her some money. I thought about it for a long time. I thought about all the lies, the stolen money, and the years I'd lost with my mother. In the end, I put the letter in the trash. I'm not a vengeful person, but I know that she's not my family. I've thought a lot about what would have happened if my car hadn't broken down that day. I would have never met Rose, and I would still be living a lie. I'm grateful that I stood up on that bus. It was a small act of kindness that changed my life forever. So, if you have a chance to help a stranger, do it. You never know what kind of ripple effect it might have.